So today we're going to be continuing to look at the alternative future of the world. In the last alternative future of the world video, we saw a ginormous war break out in Northern Africa between what is now the New World Order axis and a bunch of innocent countries such as Chad, the Central African Republic, and Niger. From there we saw a Cold War-like war break out where the WDO invaded the other half of Niger and then took half of that country and formed the West African Republic. Meanwhile, the red team continued to expand. And also, most notably in that video, we saw the Russian Civil War break out, where a bunch of factions broke away in Russia, and we ended up seeing two new Russias form, West Russia and East Russia. West Russia immediately joined the WDO, and followed by that we had East Russia forming the New World Order axis, which is kind of a merger between the previously North African alliance and Russia's own alliance. So overall, last video really heightened world tensions, and it most likely will lead into another ginormous war like we saw earlier on in the series. But for now, we gotta build it up to that point, and even if that point actually happens. So if you guys do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Our goal for 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year is now once again in sight. It kind of faded out there for a little bit, but now it is visible, it's down the road. We just gotta run there and get there in time. Speaking of time, it is running out, so make sure to subscribe, and yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right into this video. Now, as I just said, there was a Russian Civil War in the last video, which is probably going to lead up into another ginormous war. This event itself is going to raise tensions in the world greatly, and we're going to see a bunch of countries rejoin factions which they had previously left. And also, most notably though, we're going to see a new faction be created, and this faction is going to be known as the Neutral Alliance. It doesn't have an official name, so everyone just calls it the Neutral Alliance, but it was formed by Brazil, Mexico, Ireland, Austria, Tunisia, Montenegro, Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. Now you're going to notice something about some of these countries, and that is that their borders have literally not changed, such as Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, who technically did change because they annexed the rest of Turkmenistan. But then we also have Montenegro, we have Tunisia, we have Austria and Ireland. Those guys never changed their borders. Mexico had a civil war / invasion, so technically they never invaded anyone else. And then, well, Brazil's kind of the ally here, same with Turkey. So this faction is formed just to keep world peace and to prevent another great war from popping up. Immediately, some countries see this and start to eye up the factions, such as the West African Union, Bhutan and Bangladesh, Vietnam and Thailand, and finally Malaysia and Indonesia, as well as Brunei, because they still somehow exist. And this alliance is an interesting one because you don't really get saved if you're invaded. Basically, just everyone condemns you and it makes you look like you're evil. It's not gonna really do anything. You might look big in numbers, but those numbers aren't gonna assist you because it's not a defensive alliance, it's just an alliance overall. But following up with this, we have another country joining. Now, I kind of forgot this country existed because it just appeared in the last video, but Kaliningrad is independent and they joined the Neutral Countries Organization, and I guess you could technically rename it to Prussia, but there's a lot of Russians there, not very German, so maybe it'll just stay Kaliningrad. But if you guys want it to be changed to Prussia, just let me know. We might be able to, do something here. But now let's get to the more interesting things, such as a giant coalition against the new formed alliance. Not really, just a portion of it. Russia is tattered with war, but they do not care. We have East Russia declaring war on Kazakhstan. Now this is not good for Kazakhstan because, well, Russia has allies, and 4 allies in this region are going to be getting involved. Now, I know I still haven't updated the alliance map, and I apologize for that. I just haven't had time to do it, and also I kind of forgot about it. But next video, hopefully, it will be updated. But yeah, all these guys declare war in Kazakhstan, and poor old Uzbekistan is kind of in the middle of it, so they get invaded anyway. It's really not a fun video for Central Asia here, but finally we will be seeing some border changes in this area, which is the first for this entire series, as this is probably the most neutral area in the series other than the Balkans, which is extremely weird to say. There has not been many border changes down here. Now, of course, the Neutral Countries Organization, they are going to condemn this, but Russia doesn't care because it's Russia. The WDO says, hey, stop that. I mean, we don't really have any interest with Central Asia, but you should stop that. Don't do that. Anyway, the invasion begins as Russian troops pour into western Kazakhstan. Now, Russia here isn't in a good position to kind of exist. All of their population is down here, as well as like up here, and then there's nothing here, and then there's some over here. So they're going to focus their military in this region, and also probably a little bit over here as well. So invading these areas of Kazakhstan isn't probably going to happen. So Russian troops flood in from the west and mainly just pour out from this area. They don't really invade from the north because I just explained why. They move down the coast and eventually meet up with Iran, who sends their troops into Uzbekistan. We see the same thing happening with Afghanistan, and for the first time ever, we see Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan work together to take down another country. So overall, it's not pretty for these guys. I mean, there's no way they can win this war. I don't think it's really possible. It's just the situation they're in is extremely unlucky. But eventually we have the complete capturing of Uzbekistan and finally the surrender of Kazakhstan. So let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So just like that, Central Asia becomes Central Russia. We have all countries participating except for Pakistan getting land out of this, and honestly, that's probably a good thing for Russia because they can now connect with Iran and Afghanistan as well as Tajikistan, and that connection will make it easier to like supply them in case a war breaks out. So we're all good there, but Russia has nowhere else to expand now except for maybe Mongolia, but we haven't gotten that far yet. So now the Axis is getting a little picky. It doesn't really have anywhere to expand. They don't want to invade Georgia because Georgia is currently in the process of joining the WTO. Same thing with Armenia, so they don't want to invade them. I mean, they also can't because they don't border Armenia. So where is there to go? Obviously, Mongolia is easy to invade. It's just right there. And then everywhere else is WTO except for India. So what about that, says Pakistan. So we have a little skirmish taking place on the border of Pakistan and India, which the two countries had actually previously fixed the relation problem, but following the heightening of world tensions and the creation of the Axis, they just threw it out the window. I'm not saying it's necessarily Pakistan's fault, but it's Pakistan's fault. So someone shoots some shots and stuff, and you know, all that war stuff, and Pakistan's like, hey, they attacked us, and they activate the Axis. And India's like, wait a minute, no we didn't, that's a lie, you're lying, don't lie, lying is bad. But nonetheless, in one way or another, we have the Axis declaring war on India. So every single one of these countries joins in. This also includes the African ones. And India is like, whoa, wait, what? Why are you doing this to me? What did I do to deserve this? And the true answer to that is nothing. But yeah, India, who's been neutral and not in a war forever, has now been declared war on. Obviously, the world is going to react not too kindly to this by doing nothing, because that's what the West likes to do. Everyone basically just points their finger at Russia and says no, but Russia continues to do bad things as they declare war on Mongolia, and it is here that we see the breaking point for China, who is not happy with this expansion. Other countries also join in, such as Tibet, an ally of India. Other than that, no one else joins in because this is going to be a fierce war. Eventually, we finally see Pakistani troops cross the border in aid with Russian and Iranian troops. We also see them cross over into the Kashmir area, which they also still claim. Up north, we have Russians flooding into Mongolia, as well as Manchuria. Now, this is kind of the hostile Russia we saw back before all the reforms, and they just want to have their claims back, so they have a ginormous claim over all of Manchuria. They also have some of these Soviet claims, so they have claims over area which are controlled by their own allies. That's just Russia for you, though. We see a small amount of troops pushing out from Kyrgyzstan and into Chinese territory, while the Tajiks do the same thing. Overall, this is sort of a surprise invasion, so we don't see the blue team being too quick to respond. But now we have the WTO issuing a warning to the Axis saying if this war does not cease to exist in a matter of 1 month, we will get involved. And I don't think the red team wants that, because as you can see, the WTO, the World Defensive Organization, is all over the world. The Axis is also all over the world, except it's more concentrated in the Asia-Africa area. So I don't really think they want this. I mean, the countries, there's just, it's not pretty. The WTO is a really strong organization, so I doubt that they would actually want this to happen. So the philosophy is this: let's get as much land as we can in 1 month and sign peace. They full send their troops into these territories, and honestly, they're doing pretty well for full sending. That is until, of course, the blue team is mobilized and ready. Russia manages to take out all of Mongolia, and they start to seep into China, but that's as far as they're gonna get here. Chinese forces, which are probably some of the strongest forces in the world, go up north and say, hey Russia, how you doing? And by that, they push them all the way back into Mongolia on the southern Mongolian border. We do see a counteroffensive over here near Manchuria, but this one isn't going as well as Russia has stacked a lot of forces in this area. Similarly, with India, we see them pushing back the Pakistanis in the Kashmir area, as well as the area near New Delhi. Or is it just Delhi? I don't remember. We see the red team having the advantage in the Xinjiang part of China, where there's not a lot of people, until eventually they cross over into the Tibetan area, which is a new breaking point in this war. Now, the red team is doing extremely well here, and there is a reason for it, and I already said the reason. They're full sending their troops. They plan to grab as much land as they can in 1 month, and as soon as that 1 month threshold is getting there, they're going to pull out of the war and take what they got. Now, you might also be wondering about like China, who is a member of the WTO. They declared war on the red team. it wasn't an attack, it was a declaration. They're only blue because they're on India's side, who was a victim of being invaded, and India isn't in the WTO, so they don't have to worry about that. So yeah, China kind of did this to themselves, and the WTO is sending them supplies, and those supplies are starting to take effect. But once again, full sending. Russian troops crossed over on the northern Chinese border, this time across an entire front, and it is extremely hot in my room. I feel like I'm about to have a heat stroke. I don't know why it gets so hot in here, but if you can hear the fan in the background, that's just one of my 3 fans. And even with 3 fans, it is still hot as balls in here. So thank you, my room, for being a horrible place to record. I think the only benefit is that it's not echoey, but that's also because I have a bunch of soundproofing stuff and a giant flag in front of me. Yeah, but yeah, back to the war. We'll get more into my room in a future special, maybe. I don't know. Want to find out? Pakistani troops taking the initiative in the south and started to push further into Indian territory. We see them push across and even managed to cut off a portion of India from, well, India. And India responds to this by sending troops into Pakistani territory. These guys are going to push over towards Islamabad and capture the city. And it is here that we are starting to near that 1-month period. But we've been a little too kind to the red team, so it's time for China and India to push them out. China makes a sweeping campaign through the Xinjiang area and pushes them completely out of Tibet, as well as a majority of the province over here. Now, if you guys remember back, Xinjiang was once a country, and then they weren't a country because they joined back together with China. Over in Manchuria, we see Russians get almost completely pushed out of the province, although there are still some armies within. And in Mongolia, we don't see much happening as China has no interest in liberating this country. They probably should though, because Russia will just annex it and then they'll be even closer to the Chinese border, but they don't really see that yet. But overall, the counteroffensive goes well. We have India kicking the Pakistanis almost out of India. And finally, it is day 25 and both sides agree to peace right before the WTO deadline. And don't get me wrong, the WTO was ready. They had troops lined up on this Russian border right here. They had troops in Ukraine. They had troops in Georgia, which isn't a member yet, but they had troops in Saudi Arabia, which they don't know about that yet. Troops in Korea, troops in Japan. They didn't have any troops in China though, because that's kind of risky. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So in this peace treaty here, we have the blue team taking a little bit of a Chamberlain approach because they lost land. They lost land to no avail. And they did that because they want to please Russia. They want to soothe the baby, and they don't want to get invaded in the future. Part of the peace deal was that the red team wouldn't invade China or India in the future, and they agreed to that. But as we know from World War II, those kind of promises are usually not kept. So what border changes happened? Well, we have Pakistan getting a little bit of their Kashmir claim back, and then from here we have Russia nitpicking a little bit of land along the Chinese border. Now, obviously they've annexed Mongolia, but they've also taken a little bit of land out here in this part of China, so it used to look like that. We also see them taking a chunk over here, which used to look like that. And then we have one of these fancy little border things happening, which is called a border dispute. And this has happened because Russia said in a part of the treaty that they would annex this region of China. China said that's not true. They never signed off on it. And it's a mess. I mean, of course, Russia claims this area as a whole, but that isn't really recognized by anybody, not even their allies. But this claim is recognized by their allies, as well as a few other, like, random countries like South Africa. So yeah, that's great for the WTO and great for the Western world, because now they've expanded a little bit and they've shown that they somehow have the capability of taking on China and India together. Maybe because they went for that strategy. I don't know. Maybe that wasn't a smart move by them. But now we've gotten our big war for the video out of the way. It's time for some unifications. Our first unification is taking place in Southeast Asia, and it's actually going to be between Vietnam and Thailand. Now, I know these two countries I'm not sure. I know Siam was Thailand, but I'm pretty sure they also had areas of Laos and Cambodia. I don't think Vietnam was ever included in that, but now they are. As together they form Southeast Asia, or as I'm just going to call it, Siam. Now, Myanmar wants to join this because, I mean, why not? It's basically just Southeastern culture mixed together to one country. That might be a bad thing, actually. I don't know. But they can't join because they're in the WTO, and this new country is in the Neutral Alliance, and Myanmar wants to stay within the WTO because it offers them protection, while the Neutral Alliance doesn't. But then again, they would most likely get that protection from the unification between these two countries. Also, I don't think India or China would want to invade them, so there is a referendum going around in Myanmar which basically says, hey, should we unite with this or should we stay with the WTO? That update will happen in the next video. Probably not, I'll probably forget. But now we head over to Europe, where we have more unifications. First off, Northern Ireland is finally relinquished to Ireland after hundreds of years under British rule. And next up, we have a pretty big union taking place. And it's actually a union between Norway and Sweden. Now, historically, these countries have been united before, which was just called Norway-Sweden, or the Swedish Empire. And the languages aren't too different. They stem from Germanic, so it's not too crazy to think about. But together with this union, they also include Iceland. So Iceland is now a part of this. And then we have Denmark, who is holding a vote on whether or not to join this new Nordic union. Now Finland is is kind of a weird one because they are Nordic, but the languages and the culture isn't necessarily the same as the rest of the Nordic countries. They have their own language group, so that's why they haven't joined with these guys yet. But the possibility is still there, just not right now. But next up, we have a pretty big unification, which is even bigger than this one, and it's going to form one of the strongest countries in the world. A country forming between France and Germany, which then leads into the Benelux joining. Followed by that is Slovenia, and then finally Czechoslovakia. Poor thing only lasted 2 episodes. The European Union now officially exists in Europe. Now this is a cliche alternative future of the world move, but you know, I've tried my best to stay away from the cliche. It's happened sometimes with like the United States and Canada uniting, or the Chinese Civil War. That was kind of cliche. I feel like Africa was definitely a wild card, so I think I probably did good there. I think Arabia uniting is kind of cliche. Maybe Iberia and then the Nordics, but hey, this is fine because this is an economical powerhouse. Probably the 3rd, 4th, or 5th strongest economy. Of course, the United States, which still exists, believe it or not, is leading in military and economy. Followed by that is maybe probably China or India, and then finally the new European Union. It's probably a blatant country I'm missing here, but whatever. So immediately all EU countries, and the European Union does still exist, are presented with the option of joining this thing. And well, everyone else declined. These guys were the only ones that accepted it. And do note that France slimly, very narrowly joined this union. D149. So 1 vote in favor. That's not really good numbers when you're considering that people are going to be split on this. So I'm not saying a civil war is possible, but France might be in and out of this thing in the future. That's also going to lead me into another important note. Countries are allowed to leave whenever they want. So it's not a permanent union, but everyone that's in it has to leave as the country they joined in. So like the Benelux can't break into the 3 countries. They had to leave as the Benelux and then do that. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. So Czechoslovakia, you know, you couldn't just have Slovakia leave. You also have to have Czechia leave because it's Czechoslovakia. And I think you guys probably get it. So now Denmark, who I just talked about joining the Nordic Union, is split between the Nordic Union and the EU. Obviously, joining the EU is going to make the borders look a lot better, but joining the Nordic Union is going to make a lot more sense. So for now, they just kind of hold off on both and do their own thing. Coming over to South America, where we will see our last unification. We have Venezuela and Colombia uniting to form Grand Colombia. Now, I'm sure this name probably wouldn't fly with a bunch of the other members, but it's just easier on me. So Grand Colombia now exists, and the countries within the Americas is very rapidly declining. Dogs? I swear to God. Also, I have 2 dogs now. I know I've said multiple times that I would show my 1 dog, but now there's 2. So I will show one of them one day. I swear to God, I will. Maybe in an upcoming special. I don't know, but it might happen. So that's going to lead me into the next portion where I say this is the end of the video. Subscribe to my channel or you suck. Not true. All of you guys are amazing. Thank you for watching this far if you have. Now, of course, 45% of you guys are subscribed and 55% are not. So if we can get that number to flop, we will most certainly reach our goal of 100,000 by the end of this year. And of course, that's just a goal. It's not a requirement. So if you don't want to subscribe, you don't have to. It just really helps me out. And of course, that 100K special is going to have a lot of special videos coming with it. So once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.